Hi, it's Joy, and today I'm going to be watching House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 4, The Red Dragon and the Gold, which does suggest the dragons are going to get involved, that the nukes are being launched. I am so excited, but also so stressed for this episode, as always. My usual disclaimer that if you attack anybody for their opinions on characters in this show, just don't do it. We're all allowed our own opinions. Just have fun with it. Like who you like and have a good time with it. That's what we're all here to do, even though this show is so stressful. It's rarely a good time, but it is also a good time. It's a weird one. I am very, very ready for this episode. A reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon. Let's go. One thing I wanted to say, actually, a small thing. You know me, I like saying things. I saw basically because I watched the last 3 episodes on the same day, I hadn't looked at any social media about House of Dragon because I didn't want to have spoilers. So when I went on, I saw quite a few people commenting that Aegon being left with only a girl heir invalidates his position now, because if he names her as his heir, then that means that, and I completely disagree, that actually doesn't invalidate his currently, because if he had a younger son and he named his elder daughter his heir, that would invalidate his position. But as things stand, that's his only biological child, therefore that is his natural heir. In the same way that Rhaenyra, when there wasn't an Aegon, it made sense, her being declared as the heir, and it's actually a bad look on Viserys that he didn't make her his heir until he didn't think he was going to have any sons. Like, that actually kind of invalidates a little bit of the claim of, oh, he always knew Rhaenyra was his heir. He did from the time that she was 16, 17, 18, 19 onwards, but he didn't for all those immediate years. He was desperate for a son. Whereas in the case of the real history, it would have invalidated this Stephen, who is Aegon equivalent, in real history, because Stephen was only Matilda's cousin. Stephen was a nephew of the late king, not a brother. Matilda's only brother died in the White Ship, took out a lot of young members of nobility in England. And so in the real history, because he was only a cousin, it would have invalidated it. But for Aegon, it wouldn't have done, because it's the next child along is the son. It makes sense. That's how succession works. In the same way that Sansa and Arya were not named as the heirs when Robb died, Bran was, because they were girls. It doesn't matter that they were old. I know they were technically in enemy hands and missing, but regardless, like, there was no attempt of naming them as the heir of Winterfell until Bran and Rickon were no longer around by the Starks. The Lannisters wanted to capitalise on whatever they could, and we have a Stark, this one can be the heir, but in terms of the actual succession. Anyway, ramble over, stressed and excited, let's go.
Stop.
Ooh. Fascinating. Alright, Damon, you're a bit conflicted in that head of yours. Blood on his hand, and it's gone. I wonder if a part of Damon is looking at the way the Greens have just, like, taken what they wanted. They wanted the throne, they took it. Like, Otto was always planning on doing this. If there's a part of him that's like, genuinely, I could have just usurped my brother and my niece. I could have just taken it because I wanted it. Like, if there's genuinely a part of him that's like, damn it. I do think in his own twisted way he loved Viserys. He also was also very jealous of him and resentful, but he did love his brother. I don't think he would have actually done it in the same way, and I do think he has a very twisted love for Rhaenyra. But I wonder if there's that small part of his brain that is like literally 2 sword blows and I would have been sat on the throne.
But I was not told his saviour was so comely. Your mother must have been very beautiful.
Rhaenys.
Is she feeling okay? Or is she like, women are often treated in this way, so I'm gonna treat a man like this?
You did not think to mention it.
I did not think it relevant.
Oh.
I know who he is, Corlys.
Is he a bastard son or something?
Report if the recipient has need of any remedy that he is known to disagree with the gut.
I shall observe the girl closely.
Morning after tea.
Do you believe Viserys wanted Aegon to succeed him?
She is doubting everything. At this point, there's nothing Alicent can do. I genuinely, I love her as a character. I want her to have had a different life to the one she got. But at this point, she doesn't have the power. It is in this world, the men have power. And Alicent has never been somebody. She's been somebody that has had brief moments of power, brief glimpses of power, but she's never been in the position that even Rhaenyra was in as a princess and now as a half queen, like Aegon's a half king. They're both half in my opinion because neither of them is undisputed. Like, what could she do? At most, she would randomly be a voice. Like, actually, I misunderstood my husband. And all the men in her life would do is say, oh, the Queen Dowager is overcome with the loss of her grandchild and the loss of her husband. She does not know her own mind. And they'd lock her up somewhere. You know, like, a woman, she doesn't have the power to do anything in this scenario. Behind, potentially, at most, would give the blacks something to say, oh, Queen Alicent took it back. See, we were right. But it wouldn't stop the war that was coming and it wouldn't change anything. All that it would do is cause her even more inner turmoil. I actually went back, but just not long before I watched this episode, and re-watched the scene from episode 3 at Aegon's name day ceremony, where Rhaenyra has gone, she's disappeared, he doesn't know where she is, she's supposed to be there being the princess and being all perfect, and she's being a teenager, and she's gone off, and Viserys does not know where she is. And he's looking into the fire, and Alicent comes to try and get him to come back. And he's talking to her, and he says to her that maybe he was wrong in naming Rhaenyra his heir. He only did it because he wanted to protect the realm from Daemon. I think that isn't entirely true. I think he did also believe in Rhaenyra, but the words he says to Alicent are, I only did it because I was worried about Daemon and what he would do to the realm, and I did not think I would ever remarry, and I did not think I would ever have sons. Clearly, the next part of that is, I now have sons, or at least one, she was pregnant. I don't know, but like he has a son. And then he's saying to her that Targaryens many of them have been dragon riders, but not many of them have been dreamers. But he once had a vision of a child, a boy, prince on the throne, his son. He doesn't phrase it as of my blood or like of my line. He says his son on the throne with a crown. And he tried for years and years to make that come true. He killed Rhaenyra's mother in attempting to make that come true. Did I make a mistake with Rhaenyra? To Alicent, who's like, I think Rhaenyra would be a good queen. What? Because, at this point she's like 16. That conversation would long be on Alicent's mind, especially with her father reinforcing it with, she'll kill your children. Ooh. So then, if you think about that conversation that stuck in my mind as a viewer, and I went back to get the particulars to make sure I wasn't misquoting. When you're then faced with your husband saying, Aegon, he's the prince you was promised, of course you're going to think he means the prince from his dream, the prince that he promised. I think there was a degree of Alicent hearing what she wanted to hear, but I also don't know how Alicent could have taken that as anything other than as at his dying moments, Viserys saying he wanted Aegon to be king. Like, with all the information she had at her hand, yes, it was information that played into what she wanted, but I also think she was literally an hour before, like, Rhaenyra would be a good queen. I don't think she was going to be devastated by Rhaenyra becoming queen. I think she would have supported it if she could trust Rhaenyra, and that's what they were in the process of building. If Viserys had just lived a bit longer. So basically, it's not Alicent's fault that she thinks what she was thinking, because that conversation would have been on her mind constantly, with her father constantly with this rhetoric of, if Aegon's not king, your children will die, and all this kind of thing. Of course she was going to think that. And I still maintain that it's Viserys' fault that he was not a good king. Like, the minute he died on the internet, it was like, oh my god, wasn't he the most perfect king ever? And no. I don't think he was a bad king, as in, like, I don't think he wished ill for his people or anything. I think, like, he was a peaceful king, so, like, that's a good thing. There were definitely advantages to his reign. But in terms of securing the succession, he did absolutely everything wrong. He waited to name Rhaenyra until his wife was dead with no prospect of a son, clearly saying, well, didn't make it as having a boy, so I guess I'll give him a girl the crown. Is what it would look like. We know it was more complicated than that. Then he remarried to someone his daughter's age and had 3 sons confirmed and a daughter by her. By the laws of succession in Westeros, sons come before daughters. By the Targaryen laws of succession, as established in the Great Council with Jaehaerys, daughters don't even count, and a son further down the line comes in. So yes, he might have still looked at Rhaenyra, especially as she grew up, especially as she kind of got over her initial, like, sulking, like, you married my best friend and I'm angry about it, kind of, which, again, I'm not blaming her for that. She was a teenage girl, incredibly privileged teenage girl, but still a very hurt girl. Of course she was allowed to, like, act out a bit, but in terms of a future monarch, it's not the most stabilizing of visions. I mean, again, Aegon does far worse, but as always, men are judged less harshly than women. It's the way of the world of patriarchy like this. So then as Rhaenyra grew up and became more somebody that he definitely realised he could rely on and definitely would be happy with having as his heir, especially as she was the daughter of the wife he truly loved and everything, he needed to make it clear Rhaenyra was his intended heir. She should not have been on Dragonstone most of the time. She should have been in King's Landing most of the time. Viserys should have been doing more to heal the breach between the two halves of their family instead of just being like, oh, be peaceful, love each other. Yeah, you took his eye, but who cares? You know, like Luke got absolutely zero consequences for taking out a kid's eye. Now, obviously, we know the situation was very complicated. It wasn't black and white. Do I think Alicent's cry of an eye for an eye was correct? No, I think it was just born of a lifetime of seeing her children treated as less than Rhaenyra and thinking, but they're your kids too. Is anyone going to protect them? And it just further confirmed the idea that Rhaenyra could kill them and no one would bat an eye. Again, would Rhaenyra do that? No, but in terms of Alicent's mental state, it's Viserys' fault for being short-sighted. He should have done better. And every single thing that happened is because Viserys was a weak king who wanted to believe that his family was perfect and happy and that no one would ever doubt the fact that he casually won, like, oh, he wasn't casually, but like many years ago he had people swear for Rhaenyra and he then did absolutely nothing to try and show that she was a good queen. Because also Rhaenyra on Dragonstone, nobody is going to know how that she's going to make a good queen. The council members, the people, the lords, none of them know that Rhaenyra will be a good queen because they have not seen her ruling, they have not seen her at all beyond occasional appearances. Yes, they probably also know Aegon will be a shit king, but they've had those before. And again, that's my opinion. Fuck Viserys. Now, of course, Alicent will be spiraling, but in a way, all this is going to do is add to her inner turmoil and inner self-hatred because she's powerless to do anything but watch it all happen. And obviously it's hypocritical that she was so horrified about Rhaenyra having the tea, though I will point out to people, she wasn't horrified that Rhaenyra took the morning after tea. It was that Rhaenyra had lied to her about it. To her face, Rhaenyra had sworn on the friendship they once had that she didn't do anything. Now, obviously, we know she didn't sleep with Daemon, so technically Rhaenyra didn't lie, but Alicent had no way of knowing that. And she supported Rhaenyra in this fight, and it got her father, her only ally, her only protector, as much as we know he was not a protector at any point, within this court where she is so isolated and alone, sent away because Rhaenyra lied, and Viserys and Rhaenyra both knew it, and they both lied to her face about it. That was why she was so upset about the morning after tea. It wasn't simply because it was morning after tea. Now, perhaps a young, naive Alicent who's very religious might be like, contraception is illegal. I've no idea if the Seven are against that or not, but you know.
The host has taken to exploiting the tree cover to conceal its movements. He now only travels by night to confound our dragons.
And what is Cole's heading?
Part of why they ran for the trees in the first place.
Signs of an army moving.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry, I know I keep pausing, it's me. The number of memes I saw that were like, Baelor doesn't know how to say Dracarys, Baelor should have killed them. She was there to scout, she wasn't even supposed to get that close to them. The only reason she got close was so that she could identify who it was to confirm it wasn't just some local lords out for a ride. You know, like that was the only reason she got that close. She was not there to attack. She wasn't some weak girl who couldn't say Dracarys. That would have been launching a nuke. She did the right thing.
Why should your voice be any louder than ours, Princess? The Queen did not name you Hand. It is her voice and that of the King Consort.
Actually, another thing, yeah, Rhaenyra needs to name a Hand. Why hasn't she named a Hand? Because he's not saying that as though, like, he's the Hand. She needs to name her council.
What has come of this council?
Of course, the man now will respect you. I'm so sorry, Lord. The man gets respect. Men.
Our enemy.
This is the reason Viserys and Rhaenyra needed to work harder. Like, it's lucky these men are even here supporting Rhaenyra in the first place because of how they view women as different and weaker. Like, is it wrong? Is it a load of shit? Yes, but it's Westeros, for Christ's sake.
Is on each of us at this table.
Are some of them regretting their decision?
End to this conflict.
Sacking your queen's own castles and putting up people to the sword. Kingmaker, you're not fit for the White Cloak.
I mean, he isn't. Not even just because he's broken the chastity vow. he's not going to suddenly go, wait, mate, you're right. I shouldn't be sacking my queen, my true queen. You're right, mate. I mean, I know you have to have noble, but I'm Brett. This man is facing his death a lot more bravery than I ever could. But like, Cole wasn't going to be like, yeah, fuck it, I'm on the wrong side. Thanks, mate.
Yours will come in kind.
Most likely. It's not worth your lives.
It's your fucking castle!
That this war will not be won with dragons alone, but with dragons flying behind.
He is a masterful commander and strategist.
Have him turn about.
No, at least he's clearly saying stuff to put you in your place, but he's not doing it in a language they can all speak. He's taking a bit of revenge on him for what happened in the brothel. He didn't learn Valerian very well.
If I may be so bold, my queen.
You may not. Go away. But he has a lot of power here.
Rhaenyra's supporters will believe what they wish. And so will Aegon's.
Yep.
The war will be fought. Many will die.
I think a war would have been fought even if Alicent had not come from that chamber and said Viserys changed his mind. The war still would have been fought. She may have been more vocal in trying to stop it. Maybe it wouldn't have been a war on the same level, which would have been good. Because if she had got to Aegon first in the way she did, maybe she would have been able to get him secreted somewhere until they had Rhaenyra there to pop the crown on her head instead of his. But there would have been people who were furious at the idea of having a woman on the throne. There would have just been people who thought, women are weak, therefore the crown is weak, therefore I'm at attack. Like, people have always viewed moments of succession as a moment of weakness in the crown, let alone a woman coming to the throne, because women are so weak. Like, things wouldn't have been great either way, especially with how shitly Viserys handled the succession. Maybe it would have been a full-on civil war if Alicent had at least been trying to still support Rhaenyra, but her father has been so influential in her life and so in her head. I don't know that this would ever have been averted unless Viserys had done things differently. God, at this point, he's going to actually be attacked at Harrenhal and think he's dreaming. Or at least I'm going to think he's dreaming and it's going to be a real attack. Him as Aemond. What on earth? Alright, let's try and unpack that vision. It's almost that people have been making jokes forever about how Aemond is like, I want to be Daemon. Their names like just slip the D from one end to the other, etc. Like, they are very similar in a lot of ways and very different in a lot of ways. But I suppose in some ways they are both the second son, both overlooked because of their older son, even though they themselves believe they are the one more suited to the throne in many ways. Obviously, if Rhaenyra had been queen, then Aemond would be third in line to the throne. But like in terms of this succession with the Greens, he was overlooked because he had an elder brother. Even though he would have been a better king I think he would have been a better king than Aegon. Still, don't have to like him to think that, but I like him more than I like Aegon because at least he's not a rapist. He's an idiot, a homicidal idiot, but
Strong?
Rivers.
Bastard.
Once you get to know me, you'll find I'm not so bad.
The bed you sleep in was made from such a heart tree. You experienced anything?
Is she poisoning him with something to give him these visions, or telling the truth?
Do you now plan to make your own claim? Perhaps to prove yourself to her?
Do not try me with your insolence, witch.
He's considered it.
Imagine to give obeisance to one who replaced you as heir to a girl child you bounced on your knee.
That's why I find it creepy, especially creepy, that he lusted after her and seduced her. It's because he knew her from when she was a baby. He bounced her on his knee as a child, and then he was like, I'm gonna marry you because I want power. And then I think he also did fall for her in a way, but ugh.
Pay for their treachery against the laws of gods and men.
Did he lose the time? This is actually happening. She gave him something powerful.
Well met.
He's still having his visions. I mean, I do believe in this world Harrenhal could well be cursed, but I also do think, like, interesting that he sees Rhaenyra as a girl, as a child, and Laena as the woman she was when she died.
So at the ready, we are a formidable opponent.
I'm formidable!
They don't care what I think.
You've not proven them that you're worthy of having them care.
My counsel.
What thoughts would you have? You should humbly be seeking our opinions and counsel.
She's not wrong.
You have no idea the sacrifices that were made to put you on that throne.
And I would say if this was anybody else, she could maybe be a bit kinder because it's a kid in talking him through this, but at the same time, he's like a rapist piece of shit. I have no kindness for him. Listen to people who know better.
Nothing.
Fuck. You're a rapist who watches his own children fight to the death and then mourns another one that gets murdered, like... Or at least brutally fight. I don't know if they have to fight to the death in those child pits. Which I'd forgotten about until I was like, oh my god.
Dragonstone and their dragons are just across the bay.
He's gambling. He's gambling that they won't launch the nuke. But someone is going to launch the nuke at some point in the show. It's the Dance of Dragons. I actually don't think Quain is wrong in this because of the threat of dragons.
To support the war that your vassals have been fighting in your absence.
Ooh, Jace.
Where have you been these last days? You vanished without so much as a word.
Jace has grown his teeth, grown his claws.
Before I was to end it, I needed to know that there was no other path.
I respect her for that. Though I will say, if peace is the goal here, just surrender. Like, if that's all you want is peace, if you were truly good and altruistic and noble to a point that no human is, like, I do believe Alicent is truly good. Like, I'm not saying she isn't, but, you know, like, if you are this paragon of perfection and virtue, at this point you just say, the right for who sits on the throne is not worth all of this death. I'm going to surrender and face whatever consequences there are. Like, that would be the best case scenario for the people here would be if Rhaenyra just surrendered. Obviously, we wouldn't have a show. People don't actually act like that. And no one is that, like, wholly perfect and willing to risk all of their family. Like, I'm not actually expecting Rhaenyra to do it, but I do think it's funny because, like, there is a path to peace, and that path to peace is surrendering yourself. And, like, trying to sue for good terms, but being willing that you may face the tragedy of losing your entire family, but no one else in the realm will. Now, no one is ever actually going to take those terms. You'd have to literally be a saint to do that, and no one, including the people that have been made saints, were ever that saintly. You know, like...
No, I need to send a dragon.
Once you launch the nuke, child, you can't unlaunch it.
There are those who have mistaken my caution for weakness.
Don't be one of them.
If you die, all is lost.
It's funny.
Me.
No.
I will burn Cole's lines and withdraw before King.
It's funny because, like, they're saying it to Aegon as well, like, no, you can't go. But whereas, like, with Aegon, it's like, you will just get yourself killed, you're incompetent. Rhaenyra would probably do some good while she was there, but it's just not a risk you can take with the person that the claim is all about. Like, with Rhaenyra, it's very different because, like, she could do it. She would be useful if she went. Whereas with Aegon, even though they have to say the same things to him, he would not be useful. Maybe he's going to surprise me and be a devastatingly awfully brilliant commander. And with Jace, she's not risking you after she lost one kid. She'll risk anybody else's kids, don't you worry.
You lack the experience.
There is only one way to get experience, but...
You must send me, Your Grace.
At this point, like, if she just flies the dragon around, it will be like we're waving our nuclear briefcase in your face. He's a child. In all the worst ways. Is he also... is he the red and the gold? Like, is he also going to send his dragon to the fight and just defy all orders? And so therefore what maybe was intended to just be a precaution with Rhaenys and her dragon is going to become like a threat.
Show me to fight for you.
I should have told you when you first became heir to the throne. It's a secret. The But Viserys told me when he named me his successor.
She definitely is feeling a degree of confidence that Viserys never did forsake her. He always kept the claim.
Since Aegon the Conqueror's time.
Oh, here we go, seeing how effective Aegon's going to be. The nukes are being launched by both sides.
Because the horrors I have just loosed cannot be for a crown alone.
She's got that, I suppose, as a motivation.
What Viserys told me when he named me his heir.
Though I feel like, if you truly want to make sure this warning, this story, this prophecy is passed down, surrender so that none of the dragons are killed and like minimal Targaryen blood is shed, as long as, well, the rest of the blood, and pass on the message. Like, say, like, you know, as part of my terms of surrendering, I have to say something to Aegon, like, I'll write it down for him or something, and then he has to read it and burn it and pass it on to his kid. Again, I don't know that I personally would trust Aegon with it, but there are going to be other useless kings in the line, like men just as bad as Aegon have come before him and will come after him. Like, yeah, again, I'm not actually expecting Rhaenyra to stand down, but if she's doing this partly because of the prophecy of ice and fire for her father, well, this, if I'm not mistaken, this Dance of Dragons is the reason why there are so few dragons, if any, lingering on into the future.
What you have Aegon the Conqueror's dream. He called it the Song of Ice and Fire.
She got this written down somewhere in case Jace dies.
Make the signal.
What signal?
All is going to plan.
Fuck. I don't like Cole, but he apparently does have some somewhat decent strategy. Oh, and the nuke has been fully launched. My heart just breaks for all of these people that are being dragged into this throughout all of history as well. Aemond has been here the whole time. But his brother's beating him to the glory. Or is Aegon gonna struggle because Aegon's useless, and it's gonna, and also, like, if Maelys is their, I think that's the name of Rhaenys' dragon, is their biggest dragon, and Aegon's looks quite small, so Cole was always counting on them fielding a dragon. Oh lord. I have no idea if Aegon, like, even survives much further.
His Grace the King's.
Your courage! Hold to your wits! For the seven have blessed and shielded.
Look, mates, dragons are around. I blame no one for running from this. If you do run from this, you can't then claim you're the bravest person of all time, but, like, Aemond wants his brother to fail more than he wants to win. Maelys is better than you! I thought she got Aegon then. Is Aemond coming now? Oh yeah. He waited for Aegon to suffer, which again, he waited for a dragon to potentially die. One of the things they need. 2 dragons to 1.
Flank the gods! Dracarys!
He did not care that Aegon was in the way.
Your Grace!
She's retreating because it's a bigger dragon. Like the one dragon you don't want to face on your own. I think you should retreat. This is not the dragon you face on your own. This is the dragon you face with allies. I guess Aemond just like, I was gonna go kill my brother, but sure, I'll fight you. Or was he gonna go and check if Aegon was alive? Like, I would be not watching. I would be hiding somewhere that hopefully was fireproof. Yep, this is, I would not have been planning on watching. I mean, I suppose maybe these men were fighting, poor things, but... 10 out of 10, Kristen. And the nukes have been dispatched, I'm so happy. I mean, once war happened, it was inevitable, but there could have been a version of the war when neither side fielded a dragon the entire time. We just had them as threats. Obviously, both sides decided to field the dragons at the same time. At least with Rhaenyra's side, it was like... the whole council agreed. Whereas with the Greens, it was like everyone decided by himself, and then the Can decided by himself with the Prince. Is she planning to retreat? Yep, I was waiting for that. The big one was somewhere. By the throat. God, Anne's going up and up and up. If that dragon dies, can Rhaenys survive the fall? Even looking at her while he died. She died, sorry. Oh my lord. And hitting the castle. The nukes have been launched and Aemond has been allowed to Aemond. Have my issues with Rhaenys. Namely that she was so cool with working with people that she believes murdered her son. Like, palling around with these people that she believes murdered her son, but fucking hell, she did not deserve to die. He may have internal damages that are going to lead to his death. I would not be crushed about it. And Gawain's going to take the castle and get all the credit. Sorry, it's because it's Cole. Otherwise, devastation for all the lives lost here.
King has fallen. We must find him.
Oh, I don't think that person's alive. You helped bring this about. The reality is a little different to planning, isn't it? I do very much like that we're not shying away from the horror of war. We're not glorifying it.
Aemond!
Oh my lord. Is he dead? He could just be stunned. I'm guessing he's dead because they didn't like rush to him. But like, check that he's dead. You don't know he's dead. Like, yeah, the dragon kaboomed and he appeared to be riding the dragon when it happened. So I'm not assuming he's gonna pop up and be like, hey guys, let's go to the brothel. But are we gonna like triple check if he's dead? So the war has well and truly started. I will give Rhaenyra 1,000 credit. Like, I love Rhaenyra. I think she handled the build up to her father's death very poorly, but I love Rhaenyra. And I love the fact that she did not rush headfirst into this war. She genuinely tried to just rally the kingdom to her side and then tried to go to Alicent and say, can we make peace? Though I do think by the time she went to Alicent, the ship had sailed, the war had started. I definitely do think there is a world in which neither side could have fielded a dragon, and it could have been like a war where you had the threat of them, but because of the whole mutually assured destruction of dragons, we just never actually fielded them, we just used them as scouts, and then it was just men killing men, which is still brutal and awful and terrible, just slightly less. But I do quite like that both sides chose to field their dragons at the same time, because in a way you can't really lay the blame on either side for being the ones who used the nukes first. Like, technically speaking, Team Black pressed the button first, but Team Green had the codal put in and their hand hovering over their button waiting to get the word that the other side had launched. You know, so Team Green, it was a masterful strategy from Kristen Cole. Again, a dumb strategy. Aegon did kind of fuck everything up. It wouldn't have been quite as devastating if the king hadn't decided he was going to go for a little joyride. I do think Cole had never witnessed what war with dragons would be like. He maybe had seen battles, but not this, and was a little bit like shocked by how vast and terrifying an impact it is, how small and insignificant the individual soldier is on the battlefield when there is a dragon flying around. But in terms of strategy, letting Team Black field the first dragon, so therefore you can say, We didn't start bringing the dragons into things. We had a dragon just in case you brought a dragon, but we were never going to use our dragon. We would never have used the dragons unless you used the dragons. You know, you can kind of use that propaganda plausible deniability. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but Team Green has been very masterful with their use of propaganda throughout this. It's one of the ways the Game of Thrones is played, and this was a move, almost an Otto-like move. I will say with Otto, I saw a lot of people laughing about his, like, you can't say he's a brilliant strategist when, like, Aegon is able to, he's like insulting Aegon to his face and Aegon stops him being the hand. But I think with Otto is a master strategist at looking at the map. He can look into the future, he can plan 70 moves ahead of everybody else. But his biggest weaknesses are other people's unpredictability, and he fails to account for it. He fails to think, if that person doesn't do the thing I think they're gonna do, I'm screwed. And some of the time that is other people's emotions, like Viserys loving Rhaenyra, or Aegon just being Aegon. Like, he's not always able to plan for other people, maybe not doing what he views as the right course of action. And I don't even just mean the right course of action for him, I mean, like, well, I think that person will think the right thing to do is this, and if that person decides that I'm actually going to do the wrong thing, he doesn't know how to account for it. That is his biggest downfall. I hate the man, but he is a brilliant strategist. So in terms of who fielded the dragon first, you would always say, well, the Blacks did. Yes, it was part of Team Green's battle plan to get them to bring on a dragon so we could bring out our big gun and, you know, win. But it definitely, Cole was like, I want a war. And I'm gonna, Cole and Aemond were like, hey, should we get a war with dragons? I think I fancy a war with dragons. Do you smell a war with dragons on the... And they just went for it. And it had already one battle in, devastating effects. So Rhaenyra we love and we adore because she never wanted this. She wanted to try and avoid this at all costs. But then literally the moment she was like, there is no chance of peace, send the dragons. Which I don't think was the best strategy move at the end of the day. Obviously, if the Greens hadn't predicted it, it would have gone better because it would have taken longer. A raven would have had to be frantically sent back to Green Landing. Technically, King's Landing could currently be renamed to Green Landing. Sent back to King's Landing and said, they brought a dragon! And then the dragon rider would have had to run and suit up and fly. Like, technically speaking, if the Greens hadn't been preparing with Aemond, it would have gone better for them because they would have just easily defended this one castle and Dragonstone wouldn't have been entirely cut off by land. But at the end of the day, it's the lack of an army that they have right now. I suppose this also buys time. If Rhaenyra's plan had worked, fielding their dragon buys time for Daemon to get whatever army he's got, for Cregan Stark to send whatever troops he's sending. You know, it does buy them time by stopping the Criston Cole surge. But it was, I think, not the smartest decision. And if I'm missing something, please tell me, because I love Rhaenyra and I want her decisions to always be perfect. But in this one, I'm like, yeah, you'd have held this one force, but all you've done is press the nuke and been like, see, I'm tough. And like, is being the first person to press the nuke tough? I don't think so. Now, obviously, we know the Greens, I mean, 3 of them had technically already pressed the button. They just had like put it on a delayed timer, so like in terms of moral superiority, neither side has it when it comes to the dragons. But it does seem like Rhaenyra was like, you want war, fuck it, like we're all in. And any consideration she did once have for people other than her own family did kind of run out of the window there, as with every ruler of all time throughout history. I don't think there's ever been like, has there ever been a ruler that's been like, I have the rightful claim in this situation, but I don't want the ordinary folk to die, so I'll surrender? I don't think so. I don't think human nature would do that. But sending in the first dragon, I didn't expect it. I genuinely didn't think she was going to just casually be like, hey, Rhaenys, go. And then I was like, well, maybe she's going to send Rhaenys to like fly over the castle. This is me being a dragon. Fly over the castle. Like, hey, you want this castle? You're coming through me. But not actually engage. You know, give the Greens time to go, fuck a dragon, and leg it. And then, you know, if the Greens continue to advance, then the dragon. No, this dragon was like, I see enemies. Dracarys. So yeah, I think it was, neither side are military geniuses or perfect people. Rhaenyra's side is in the right, but at this point neither side is in the right because nukes have become involved. Jesus Christ, I almost forget the entire rest of the episode even happened with that final battle. Okay, so jumping back a little bit to Daemon. We all know my opinion on Damon. As a character, love him. As a human, despise him. Like, I genuinely don't know that he has a redeeming quality, and I'm being a little bit glib there. Like, I guess he loved his brother, but he also had a lot of complicated other feelings towards his brother. Yes, he loves his daughters, but he's also not really bothering to stay in touch with them or look after them. You know, like, Damon loves Damon first and foremost, and while I think he believes he loves Rhaenyra, I think he believes he loves Rhaenyra more than he loves himself, and he believes he has always put Rhaenyra first. I think when you actually boil it down, he hasn't, and he has always resented Rhaenyra, as these visions are showing, and he has always viewed himself as better than Rhaenyra. And still, you can love someone and think you're better than them, but is that a love that we should be like, oh, I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with loving Damon as a character. Please don't get me wrong, he's fantastic. Matt Smith is portraying him fantastically. But just as a person, even his redeeming qualities, when held up to the light, are quite tainted. But his meeting with Alice Rivers was fascinating. Another strong bastard. I wonder if she feels any like, I'm a strong bastard. I know some other strong bastards. They're getting to become princes. That's not fair. Because traditionally speaking, you'd be considered the bastard of the man, even though the woman bore you. I don't know what... There aren't many cases where a nobly born woman had bastards, I suppose. Like, a higher up woman, I suppose, would have had bastards. That were known about. I'm sure there were many high-born women with bastards, but, you know, that were known about. To try and, like, think of. It's just, I think it's interesting because this is really showing us that Damon is warring with internal instincts of being mad at Rhaenyra and wanting to claim the throne for himself. I think part of him always seeing her as the younger version of her, the version that first stole the throne from him in his mind, is him viewing it as, I should have done something differently. I should have claimed the throne. He's always had this resentment against her, even throughout their epic love story that people think they had. I think they loved each other. I just don't think it was an epic love story at any point. I mean, they still love each other. But he is warring with that part of himself. Now, I do ultimately think he will choose to support Rhaenyra. But I also think at this point, he doesn't really have another choice. The only other choice he would have would be hopping on his dragon, flying back across the sea and living it up as a Lord Nessos again. You know, which he didn't enjoy. So, like, he doesn't really have anything to go on at this point. Because Viserys was the rightful king. He has 2 of his children warring it out over the throne. His brother suddenly being like, what about me? It doesn't add up. That just, by no stretch of the imagination. Damon is now, I mean, whichever way about it you go, you've got Rhaenyra and her 2 children by that one, 2 children by that one, so that's 5. Then you've got Aegon and his 1 surviving child, then Helena, then Aemond. So Damon is like 9th in line, 10th in line to the throne, I think. Like, he is very far back into the line of the succession now, by any form of stretch of the imagination. Whether you count girls, whether you don't count girls, he is 9, 10, 5, like, he doesn't have a claim as things stand. He could maybe try and scare some people into giving him an army, but at the end of the day, he would just fail, and I don't think he's stupid. I think as much as he might forever be resentful of it. Another thing that I think is very telling of how the patriarchy operates and of why Rhaenyra and Viserys needed to do more work in order to have Rhaenyra be crowned queen and there not be a civil war or any kind of succession troubles and continue this era of peace, because Viserys could not care less about this era of peace once he died, because he did nothing to ensure it happened, is the very fact that Daemon is going to be the prince consort and not the king. Because traditionally, as we all know, as happens in Westeros, as happens in the real world, when you have a king, you have a queen who is just the woman he marries. She hasn't got any, like, she has power through the king, but she's not the queen. They're not sharing their duties. She is his consort, but she is known as the queen. The reason princes like queen's husbands, if a queen is the one with the birthright holding the title, are prince consorts and not king, is because traditionally people were worried that if a queen got married to a man, because the queen was just a woman, the man would take all the power and the rightful queen would not have it anymore and the man would take over. And so if he was called king, he's gonna be taking that power, so we have to call in the Prince Consort. That is another indication of just how patriarchal these systems are, because at this point, if we're saying Rhaenyra is just as capable as anything, why doesn't she just have a king? In the exact same way that if we look at the English monarchy, Elizabeth, Prince Philip was Prince Philip throughout their marriage. Camilla's Queen Camilla. Like, these stupid systems still exist today, but it's yet another instance of why they have to fight so much and why they should have done more to shore up her claim. But Damon, yeah, his vision's very interesting. Alice Rivers is a fascinating character, and Harrenhal himself is fascinating. Because if this was like a sort of realistic fictional history, if that makes sense, like as in no dragons, no magical visions and prophecies and wargs and all that, I would be like, she's just giving him something in his tea to give him some spicy dreams and manipulate him. But obviously this is Westeros, which we know does have magic, which does make me think if they use gods with trees, as she said, or cut them down and use them, they probably are. It probably is cursed, and that would explain all the terrible things that have ever happened in Harrenhal. But it gives us an interesting look into Daemon's psyche. Alice Rivers herself is fascinating. And like at this point, Daemon's just having some mushy peas and being like, bring me an army. And then getting high. So I'm very intrigued with what direction they're going with Daemon, where his story is currently going, because a lot of other stuff is happening, and I do feel like when Daemon hears of this battle, he's not going to be best pleased that by any of this. And actually I think it further adds to Cole's genius. And I hate using those words, but the genius of his particular bit of strategy in getting the blacks to launch the dragons first. That is what I'm saying is genius here. Because if they had marched on Harrenhal, where they knew Daemon was there with the dragon, so turning up, you're basically like to somewhere where there is currently a dragon there, you're basically inviting that dragon to attack. And bringing a dragon in reserve when there is a literal dragon where you're going, you can be like, oh yeah, that was really in reserve, wasn't it, mate? Yeah, I don't think so. Whereas doing it in a place where there was not a dragon, but there was ease of access for dragons to get to, but there wasn't a dragon right now, you can really propagandize against the blacks. Then back in King's Landing, the main thing to talk about is Alicent, other than Aegon, who we'll get to, and her internal struggles with, she is clearly now, deep down she knows Viserys did not change his mind. And it's just going to add to that feeling of guilt and self-hatred that is developing in her through her promiscuity with Kristen, but just in general, because I don't think Alicent is a bad person. I think she has done some bad things, just like Rhaenyra has. I don't think Alicent is a bad person by any means. And I've talked about her at great length in other reactions, and I can do again, but I won't. But right now she's dealing with her piety, with just her genuine looking at all the awful tragedy that's happening, and she's thinking, could I have changed things? If I had not come out of when my husband died, if I had sat at that council meeting and been horrified when my father said, oh, we're going to put Aegon on the throne, could I have done things differently, and would things be different now? And I think the answer is probably yes, but also no at the same time, because it's very easy to sideline a woman. All Otto would have had to do would have been to say, oh, the Queen Dowager is in great distress after her husband died. Let's pop her in her room so she can grieve and lock her up. You know, the women traditionally were just put out of the way when they got in the way. So I don't know that she necessarily would have had much power. It would have come down to, yet again, who could get to Aegon first, and it would have been a very complicated situation. I think even had the Greens put up zero opposition to Rhaenyra being put on the throne, there would have been some unrest because of the patriarchy. Because for one thing, lords are always like, it's a moment of succession, things are a bit weaker, maybe I'm going to go ask for that tax, maybe to pay less taxes, or maybe I'm going to say, hey, I want my client, like, yeah, the king did say I couldn't fight my neighbour of that bit of land, but what if I just did it? You know, that there would have been more unrest, there would have been some kind of, there maybe even a full-blown rebellion, because as I've said in a previous situation, you would have younger brothers of, like, you'd have lords who had an older sister being like, is she gonna say that, like, she should have my throne because she's older, my lordship, my castle, because she is older than me, but like it's mine because I'm the son. There would have caused some problems throughout Westeros, I think, regardless, but maybe not this much. But I also don't think Alicent was ever, like, once Viserys died, she kind of lost that power that she had. She held it briefly, so maybe that brief moment would have done differently, but I don't think it would have been a great difference. Maybe it would have been, but it also was a genuine mistake. Yes, Viserys' last words being, put Aegon on the throne, love, helps her out. It's what she wanted, but I think it's wrong to just make Alicent's character as black and white as she's always wanted her son on the throne. She's just wanted to live and for her children to live. And she has been used by every single man in her life and twisted this way and that. And I don't know, maybe on the eve of her brief reconciliation with Rhaenyra, things could have gone differently. I don't know. But it's sad. And it's sad for me to see her struggling so much with herself. But what was quite interesting was her standing up to Aegon. Now, again, 99 times out of 10, that doesn't make any sense. Most of the time, I would be horrified at any mother being as callous towards their child as she is, being as like, you know, it's what, yeah, sometimes you need to give your kid the like honest truth. You can't just coddle them and be like, no, you're perfect, don't worry, when they're not. But maybe you don't have to do it quite as bluntly as she is. But then I'm also like, this man is like is a terrible rapist, mourns one child while watching his other children fight. Yeah, be as callous as you want. And I think if someone had simply paid him more attention, and though Alicent has actually always spoken to him quite callously, which maybe he could have when he was younger done with a bit more of the gentleness, but she was a kid herself when he was younger. She was 14 when she married his father and had him basically as soon as possible afterwards. Like, she was a baby herself and was raised by a callous father, had lost her mother. I don't know what else anyone expected. Viserys, we know he's capable of raising a kid with love because he did it with Rhaenyra, more or less. Where was he with his other children? People forget that when they praise him. If there are no King Viserys haters, I am dead. Yeah, I mean, on balance, was he the world's worst king? No, but I think he was a king that set up his kingdom to fail, and he was a shit dad. Okay, I've said it. And a shit husband. And a paedophilic rapist. But it was quite good to see her say to his face, like, oh, you know, like, you just need to do nothing. Like, oh, because it is, as a young, inexperienced king, your job is to learn and to grow and to take advice. And yeah, there are probably times when you can say, I don't agree with that, we're not doing that. Sure, but do it because you genuinely think you have a plan and a solution, that you've been sat in your chambers the night before the council meeting thinking, oh, I know we're going to be discussing that trade dispute and maybe we could do it this way. Then you can say your opinion. But when you're just like, no, I don't want to do that. I do think, I mean, I'm like, I don't know if I'm being like stupid in being like, is he dead? Because no one went over to him to check. And I think the bare minimum you should do when you see him, is there any chance he's alive? Because maybe like his dragon didn't go down quite as quickly or from as high as Mele's. Like, I don't think it's as black and white whether or not he's dead. So am I A, stupid for thinking he's dead, or B, stupid for thinking he's not dead? I don't know. But assuming he is dead, regardless, he's probably gravely wounded. This is going to be another thing to add to Alicent's self-hatred shame spiral, that she was so harsh with him, and then she told him to do nothing, and he rode off on his... But literally all he had to do was do nothing. If he is dead, it's going to be interesting. I presume... Is his daughter called Jaehaera? Or am I making that Jaehaerys and Jaehaera? I don't know. I assume his daughter would be his heir. Which, again, does not mean that what he was doing with Rhaenyra is stupid by any means, is invalidating, because if there was a younger son, that son would be king, not Jaehaera. Like, there is only a girl, is what I'm assuming is going to be what happens. But it is a far weaker position, regardless, to have a little girl, a girl be a child on the throne is always a weak moment in any regime. But, yeah. Cole failed his epic. He was riding to glory. He was being called the Kingmaker, and now the king is dead, and the one bit of glory, the taking of Rook's Rest or whatever, Gawain Hightower was like, hey guys, it's me. That was his voice, right? Which, Cole deserves it, let's be honest. So yeah, Aemond is Aemond. In a similar way to Daemon, I think technically, I do believe Aemond has done less bad than Daemon, and come at me if you want. I hate him for what he did to Luke. I don't like him. He's another person who I love as a character, hate as a person, although I still think he's done less bad things than Daemon. So therefore, I like him more than I like Daemon, but I don't like either of them, if that makes sense. Sorry. Aemond's decision, like, oh, that's my brother. Initially, he was like, fuck, he's taking my glory, and he was ready to go and try and beat him to it. And then he was like, let him face the consequences. I'm not going to coddle him. He got his brother killed, because if he'd joined that fight sooner, that wouldn't have happened. And then Aegon was in his sights, and he got his final revenge. Like, he didn't even try to avoid his brother, he just went through him. And I think at the very least, when Aemond and Vhagar appeared, Rhaenys would have been like, well, at least I've got the usurper between me and him. I've got a bit of protection. No, you don't. No. Do not underestimate Aemond. Yeah. That was a lot. At this point, I'm like, I can almost see if Aegon is dead, and so Jaehaera is queen, I could see Aemond being like the regent, and bringing Otto back potentially as the hand, unless he just doesn't like he wants to do it all himself. I don't know. Jesus Christ. This was absolute carnage and chaos. I love the fact that the second the dragons got involved, everything went to shit. Because in a normal battle, you can more or less keep your commanders safe. Like, yes, throughout history, there have been kings who fight on the front lines, especially in the earlier histories. Like Harold Godwinson, supposedly an arrow in the eye. William the Conqueror fought on that battlefield. Everyone thought he was dead. His men started to rout and to run and to flee. So he took his helmet off and rode around, I'm alive! I'm alive! And they were like, King's alive! And they came back. Like, that is the recorded history of what happened at the Battle of Hastings. Like, there have been throughout history where the leaders have. But then, quite quickly, kings would be at the battlefield, but on a horse at the back, ready to ride away if things went badly, to just sending their armies off with a general. You know, it'd be quite easy to not lose your king in a normal battle, and then when they're on a dragon and the dragons are fighting a dragon, it's not going to look good. So yeah, this first battle will be one that will go in the history books for sure, but a devastating loss for both sides in different ways. For Team Black, they have lost in terms of just being purely like military, looking at them arsenal, they have lost their biggest and baddest dragon. They have lost their greatest weapon. Their biggest dragon died to Team Green's biggest dragon. Not good, because how are their other dragons supposed to cope? I do think Rhaenys should have fled sooner. I think the minute she saw Vhagar, she should have been like, this is over, and fled. Maybe she would have made it. I still think he might have chased her down like he did with Luke. Bigger dragon probably flies faster even though it's older. But maybe even just the sight of her coming and then seeing Vhagar behind, because I think the way to take Vhagar down is surely multiple dragons. Being attacked from multiple angles. It's a big, slow old dragon as much as it is big. You know, having multiple opponents attacking Vhagar is probably going to be the way to take Vhagar down. I have no idea how Vhagar actually gets taken down. All I know is that there are basically no dragons, or at least very few dragons left at the end of the Dance of Dragons. But for this, Rhaenys should have fled when she saw Vhagar. Even fled back across the ocean, grabbed some reinforcements and popped back again, but she shouldn't have stayed and fought. I think you could kind of see that she was like, my queen has ordered me here to a degree, but also just like, I'm so sick of all this bickering, all these people giving me orders and not knowing what to do, and all this back and forth, and my husband not listening to me, and my queen not listening to me, and the council not listening to me. I should have been queen all those years ago, because how different would things have been if Jaehaerys had just been like, yep, my firstborn son has one child, therefore that child is, because if I'm not wrong, it's Rhaenys' father is older than Viserys' father, which is why if you're following the lines of succession, that's next, not this. But they were like, girls don't count, we're going to the boy, which is what Team Black and Viserys needed to think of when they were just assuming everyone would be cool with Rhaenyra becoming queen. If she had just been queen, yeah, we'd have had a gay king who wasn't very happy about it, but, you know, he probably would have managed to have a couple of kids. There are kings in history who are probably gay. Maybe they're bisexual, we don't know for sure, obviously. But most of them had a couple of kids. Maybe those kids were all bastards, but no one at the time really said it too much at the time. Or at the very least, Laena would have been able to have a kid, and then like the line could carry on that way. Maybe even be married to Daemon or something in order to like tie the two in like she did. But yes, it would have been better. But yeah, no, that's not what men want to do until it serves them. No, but it is a huge also loss of losing Rhaenys. She's a character I struggle with a little bit because I find that they're portrayed her as the sensible one, the wise one. And there were definitely a whole lot of times when I was like, she knows what she's up to, and all the men in her life are just fucking everything up. And I think that is very much the story of her life. But there are kind of the two big sticking points for me with Rhaenys. The first one is when she just casually massacred all the small folk who'd been forced into Aegon's coronation. And like, I know people have said, oh, that's the only way out. I don't buy that that's the only way out of the dragon pit for 1 second. And if it is, she could have even just sort of waited till the coronation was there. I don't know. There's more, they don't only go in and out. Like, she could have, maybe the other way was guarded, but she could have got out a different way. She wanted to make a spectacle and a point, and she did. My other sticking point with her, other than the massacre of hundreds, is this show has forgotten that Rhaenys and Corlys think that Daemon and Rhaenyra killed their son. They just haven't mentioned it at all. There's not been a snide comment when Rhaenyra lost a son. Rhaenys talked about the loss of her daughter, but not her son. And I needed them to either say, you know, like in a quiet moment, I needed a scene where Rhaenys said to Rhaenyra, like, oh, I know what it is to lose a child. I'm just thankful that thanks to you, my son, I know at least my son is happy somewhere. You know, something where at some point Rhaenyra was like, hey, your son was gay and just really unhappy, so we just freed him to go live his best life. Yes, we killed someone else, but that person, who cares? He was just a commoner. No one cares. Like, I would have liked something like that, or a scene in which they acknowledge the absurdity of siding with the murderers of your son because they're your best bet. Because it is absurd, and it's absurd that this sensible, smart, intelligent woman who loves her children would just so readily side with the people that killed them and hold no grudges about that fact. Because obviously they're so intertwined. They're Corlys and Laena's surviving inherent, like, biological family are Baela and Rhaena, who are Daemon's children. Daemon is married to Rhaenyra. When they initially allied, the girls were both married to the prince and betrothed to the princes. I don't think either of the marriages have actually happened at this point. And like, their family was very much tied in with them. Plus, you've got kind of like true Targaryen, which Rhaenys is, with the High Tower Targaryen. In terms of that, makes perfect sense for them to ally with the Blacks. Then when you think that they genuinely believe they murdered their son, I'd either stay out of the fight or support the Greens. Like, try and get the girls somehow, like, smuggle them out of there and run. And then obviously they're cool with them being bastards, which fair enough. If you want to be cool with that, that's you. Your heirs are also Rhaenyra's heirs, so like, you kind of have to stick with her. I get why, but it's weird to me that they are so easy with it all when they genuinely, it will be like in the future Rhaenyra palling around with Aemond. Like, they all survive this somehow. There's something happens and somehow they're all alive at the end of it. Obviously it isn't going to happen, but it does in this fictional world. War never happened and they all managed to work together. But then, oh dear, someone's attacking from Essos and it's actually like Aegon the Conqueror take 2. We've all got to work together to stop this. And Aemond and Rhaenyra work together side by side. She defends him in the council when he's not around. Like, it just wouldn't happen because he killed her son. But they think she killed his, like, I don't understand. And it frustrates me that she died without there being any kind of understanding or closure on that front. It doesn't even have to be Laenor returning, but just, does she know he's alive? And that would explain it. She couldn't care less about some commoner dying. Like, she might be a bit miffed that she didn't get to say goodbye, or that they didn't tell her that she had to grieve him and all that. But she would probably be like, yeah, cool. She always knew he was gay as well. But she and Corlys working so readily with the murder of their son, it was a huge sticking point with her character. So I found it hard to really, like, empathize with her because she didn't appear to have emotions I could understand or thought processes that I can understand a lot of the time. But I do think she is a great loss to Team Black because of her wisdom, her strategy, other than when she decides to take on the biggest dragon by herself, and her belief in Rhaenyra and her winning inexplicably, given that she thinks Rhaenyra had her son killed. It is a huge loss to Team Black, a huge loss to the Targaryen dynasty, to Corlys, and it's going to be very interesting. Now, obviously, the bigger loss is potentially the king of the green side, who, from the way Cole just collapsed, I am assuming he's dead. But then on the black side, they've lost their biggest dragon. It's just this was a shit show. It was an epic shit show to watch. My heart aches for every single small folk, commoner person who is not going to get their son, brother, best friend, lover, boyfriend coming home. But that's why we gotta choose who sits on the throne somehow. Phenomenal episode. A reminder that you can find the unedited version of these reactions on my Patreon, and thank you so much for watching.